Hi, this is Bob Ethington.
And I'm Nick Nicholas.
And this is From Akron and Beyond. Hello, everybody. Well, today we have a guest that I'm very much looking forward to having a nice discussion with, because he has been part of the Akron music scene for quite a while, and he has a lot of ambitious projects going on, and it should be a lot of fun. We go back a ways as well, playing with some of the same people. So our guest today is Dave Rich. Hi, Dave.
Hi.
And how are you doing today?
Fine.
Good. We'll see if we can fix that when the show's over with our hard-edged questions. So Dave goes, my experiences with Dave go way back, but I want to go back into like way before I knew you. So are you from Akron?
Kind of. I was born in Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're kind of from Akron.
But I don't really remember that, although my parents tell me, well, they're both from Akron.
Okay.
And they moved out there. My dad moved out there for a job. And I was born out there, and though I don't really remember it, according to my parents, I lived through, I think we moved away from Oklahoma when I was 3.5 or 4, but we had lived through like 3 or 4 tornadoes.
Yeah.
And to this day, even though I don't remember any of that, I have like a tornado dream once a month.
Really?
I don't remember anything, but like it's in there somewhere. But then we moved here, I think, when I was in first grade. So I feel like I'm from Akron. I mean, I think I am.
Sure.
My family is.
And you were here the whole time? You didn't
No, I've been here since first grade.
Yeah. I lived in Oklahoma City for a while when I was a kid.
Oh,
where in Oklahoma were you?
We lived in a city called Broken Arrow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, right next to Broken Bow. I actually met somebody. There's a bartender in a defunct Akron bar who one time I was talking about where I was from, and she was from Broken Bow, which I didn't even know existed at the time.
Well, Oklahoma is real, indigenous native nation country there.
That new movie.
Right, the Scorsese film. It's all sitting there. Yeah.
My mom said she knew it was time to get out of there when people would ask me what my name was, and I would say David, and she was like, "We got to get the hell out of this state."
Yeah. Not to make this about me, but I think we've had this conversation because I had the same thing. I had a real Southern accent from living in Oklahoma and in Texas. Like 3rd grade through 6th grade, and then when I moved up here, everyone thought I was
I love the way people from when
thought so.
When I was in bands that would play in Tennessee, I love the way people from Knoxville talk, and it's impossible if you just hang out with them for like a day or two. I found it impossible not to start talking like them.
Yeah,
it's slower, and it's just I don't know. I wish I talked like that.
And I still have ingrained in me a yes, ma'am, and a yes, sir thing when I meet people I don't know, because you got beaten if you didn't say that when you were in school in Oklahoma. And I remember the tornadoes too. Yes, that was a crazy place. All right. This has been a great show from Broken Arrow and beyond. We're getting off track. Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say somebody's, dialect rubs off on you. You should watch all 6 seasons of binge watch Peaky Blinders.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Yeah.
Don't start talking like that, Nick. I have to slap you around. Okay, so you born in Oklahoma, you ended up here in Akron. And where in Akron? Like, where'd you go to high school and stuff?
All the schools I've gone to have been like torn down. So I went to Fairlawn Elementary.
I'm sure.
Fairlawn Elementary. They couldn't get the stink out, so they had to rip them apart. Fairlawn Elementary, which is now called Resnick. And then I went to Perkins for a year, which is just gone. Now it's like a field. Well, no, I guess it's turning into a housing development. Litchfield, which is still called Litchfield, and Firestone, which is still called Firestone, but they're totally different buildings. And then I went to University of Akron. So yeah, public school all the way, just like my kids currently.
Yeah. Okay. And then you are married? You have kids?
Yes, I have a son who's 9 and a daughter who's 6. Okay. They're from Akron as well.
And before we get to the music, because as we find, there's those lucky few who actually are able to make a dime off of doing music, but you actually have a employment, do you not? A job, in other words.
I do. Yeah, I work. My day job, so to speak, is I work for a healthcare company, and we cater to a very stigmatized population. So we focus a lot on addiction, and it's a fascinating job. And when music sort of became less of a option for, like, I guess, a career, as if it ever was going to be one. But once I had to give up on that a little bit, went into the nonprofit work. And although the job I have now is not nonprofit, the stuff I learned in the nonprofit world is helping me immensely at this one. So.
Yeah. Well, it's good work you're doing. I can speak to that from personal experience. So it's good you're doing that. Okay, so let's move on now to your music life. Now, anyone who hasn't heard Dave Rich play guitar, all I'll say is that he is fantastic. You're a great guitar player.
Pretty amazing.
And so obviously you have a lot of practice and a lot of woodshedding going into that. How did you first start getting into music? Like, do you remember like what you first listened to that kind of, you thought, man, I'd like to actually do that?
My dad loved Springsteen, still does. And stuff like, there's very certain genre my dad loved when I was little. Like it was Springsteen, Huey Lewis, Bryan Adams, which I still love all that stuff. Bryan Adams' Reckless album, I can sing front to back right now. And I really love the guitars on that stuff. This is so embarrassing, but when I was in like fifth or sixth grade, my cousin gave me a cassette. It was this insane album of The Simpsons doing songs, and there was a version of, I haven't listened to it, and I don't ever want to hear it again. I'm sure it'll be even more embarrassing. But there's a version of Johnny Be Good, I think, that like Bart Simpson sang. But I remember thinking the guitars were really cool, and I asked my parents for a guitar, and my dad said, "Yeah, well, if you play the guitar, your fingers will bleed." And I think he only got that information from Bryan Adams' Summer of '69, which he says, bought it at the 5 and dime, played it till my fingers bled. Although my fingers have bled since then, so it is actually true. But and so when he said that, I was like, I don't want my fingers to bleed. And then a couple years later, I was in 8th grade, and I knew some guys who were getting guitars, and I was just instantly jealous of them, even though I didn't really listen. When I went in 8th grade, I transferred to a different school for 8th grade, and as soon as I got there, everybody was like, "Are you going to the Green Day concert at Blossoms?" It's probably like 91 or 92, I don't know, something like that, 93. And I had no idea who Green Day was, and I was like, "Why would I go to a rock concert?" But then, like by like the end of 8th grade, my hair was green, and I for Christmas that year, my parents said, I'd asked for a weight bench and an electric guitar, and they said you could have one of those, and I chose the guitar and not the weight bench. So my life could have ended up very differently if I would have been as obsessive with the weight bench as I have.
Arnold Jr. here.
Yeah. And so I got a kind of a cheap. At the time wasn't cheap, but it eventually kind of fell apart. I got a Squier Bullet Stratocaster, and unlike when I was a kid, when I was younger, the only thing I really wanted to do was draw comic books, and I can't draw. I still can't. And I would try, and after school every day, and on weekends I would sit down with pads of paper, and I would try to like draw comics, and I was just awful. I could never improve or get any better. And when I got the guitar, it was like, oh, well, I can actually see myself getting better. And so I think that's what hooked me. It was like, oh, if I work at this, I actually can see improvement, unlike my inability to draw three-dimensionally, or like can't draw anything that anybody can recognize. So, and it also came at a really good time, because like a lot of, when you're just about to rocket into puberty, I'd find out much later that like I have a whole lot of things that are now diagnosable, like generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder. And at the time, looking back on like my early childhood after years of therapy, I can see like, oh yeah, there were signs when I was little, but it kind of really ramped up once the hormones went crazy. And I noticed also, I didn't realize it at the time, but like when you play guitar, playing along to records, or if you're writing stuff or you're running scales or whatever, like it kind of shuts off your higher or your lower brain. I don't know if it prevents me from like the obsessive, intrusive thoughts that had started to really ramp up around that age and still continue. So,
yeah, I think that's very typical, actually. I mean, I think that playing an instrument like that can be very healthy for kids, particularly at a certain age.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, I that totally makes sense.
It's, it's kind of, sounds like hyperbole, but I genuinely think it probably has saved my life quite a few times, because when you're depressed or you're angry or you don't know what to do, you can, you play the guitar, and it doesn't matter if you're writing something, but like if you just sit down and you're learning somebody else's thing, or you're practicing something you've never done before. You're using both hands and your eyeballs, and you're pretty much unable to think about, the stuff that I used to obsess about. Like, when are my family members going to die? Or, is my dad going to get in a car accident on the way home from work? Or this other stuff that my brain loves to shove into the forefront of my day. So,
Nick, you're a rocker, but you don't actually play an instrument. You're a singer and a lyricist. Did you find that there was a therapeutic aspect to music for you?
Yeah, well, I actually had the nerve to, start the band back when I was 26 years old, which is a lot later than most people. The lyrics, the poetry that I thought I was creating, it was amateurish, but it was something that I'd never done before, and it helped a lot.
Yeah. As I played drums, and it was a very similar thing to how you were describing learning the guitar. Every day I'd get home from school, and I'm like, I don't have a girlfriend.
Yeah.
I never will.
Yeah. I remember a friend of mine at some point I said, like, we were hanging out, and I was like, oh, I got band practice tonight. And he said something like, you guys, because he was friends with all of us, he's like, you guys are so lucky that you can play instruments. And while I do feel like that, I feel lucky that that I'm healthy and get to do it. At the time, I was like, dude, when you're hearing me play guitar, that's me not going to any high school dances. That is me not going on a date until I was about 23. I put my time in, man. There are some people, I think, who, pick up an instrument and it's like, it makes sense to them. And that was not me. Right. I don't think I have any natural talent.
You worked at it.
It's been me busting it into my hands over, 30 years.
Well, it's worked out for you, I can tell you that much. Now, what was the first, it's always a big step when you go from playing the guitar in the basement or your bedroom or whatever to playing with other people. What was your first band?
Oh gosh. My first band was in 8th grade. It was immediately after I got a guitar. It was like, I got a guitar, so I can join this band.
Okay, yeah.
We had about 19 different names in 3 months, and
same guys.
Yeah. Two guys that I still know to this day who still play guitar and are really nice. I've lost touch with the drummer, but we all, it was it was such a perfect middle school band. Like the drummer really wanted us to be the Eagles, and the bass player really wanted to be like the Offspring, and I thought we were going to be Nirvana, and the other guitar player really wanted to be Smashing Pumpkins, and none of us were happy at any point with any of it. We played a couple. I think we played like an 8th grade graduation party for someone, and the cops came, and that was really exciting because we were so loud. And
right.
But yeah, it didn't last very long. And then I started another band in 9th grade, and I was definitely a product of what was on the radio, and so it was all 90s grunge. Like Kurt Cobain was already passed away, but I was obsessed with Nirvana and Soundgarden and heavier, sludgier stuff.
Yeah.
So my ninth grade band, which was called Dad, just a terrible band name. I still have a tape, and I did not bring it because no one's allowed to hear that. But like, it was like all drop, low tuning guitar and lots of screaming, and it's just very bad. Although arranged not terribly. When I think back to those songs, like of course can't remember like birthdays of my friends, but I can remember the stupid songs I wrote in 8th grade. And then kind of after that, that band broke up for a few also like bad garage gigs in front of people. And I didn't really know. I was kind of listening to like a lot of heavy metal, and I got a job at a terrible generic mall CD store. It was not like Camelot, but it was something like that. They made you wear a tie every day. Okay, so it's like we're selling music and like posters and patchouli oil and stuff. But you had to wear a tie. If that makes any sense.
You're dressing like Mormon missionary.
Yeah, it was not. I mean, I liked it because I was around music, but I had no. It was not like working in the cool kids record store.
Right.
But I was lucky enough that the guy who hired me, who I kind of know, we're social media friends. He was a huge fan of like Merge Records and stuff like that, and so he persuaded me to buy this. There was a sampler CD available. It was called the What's Up Matador compilation.
Yeah,
it was like $2.99 or something, and it was 2 discs of like Superchunk and Guided by Voices and John Spencer Blues Explosion and Pavement, and that rocked. I mean, that was like that was the first time I could hear like, oh, music like does not have to be produced by Butch Vig or whatever. And there's a song on there by a guy named Tobin Sprout, who used to be in Guided by Voices for a while. He has a song on there called The Small Parade. And I've listened to that song, I don't know how many times in my life. I still don't know what the lyrics are all the way. It doesn't matter because it's like, it is so homemade sounding, but in like such an ethereal way. Like the chords are simple. It's got this reverby piano. The drums kind of sound like it's like a grocery bag being hit. But I heard that and it completely altered I'd never heard anything like that before. Like true lo-fi stuff. And that just like after that, I mean, it was like one day I was playing like this drop D, guitar. When you do is you lower your first string to D, and then you can play really heavy chords with one finger. And like it was like one day I was playing like that, and then the second I heard that Tobin Sprout song, I was just like, I have to understand how like the simple chords go together. Like they have to, and so that really blew my mind, and to this day still does. I listen to it now, and it's like all those bands from there, and then from that, it's like get into the Replacements and all the adjacent stuff that I didn't get to live through, but is the stuff I still listen to this day.
Right. We had an earlier episode where we were talking about the sampler LP. Those can be like very mind-opening, right? I mean, you hear all these different things, and back in the day of me and Nick, I mean, this is back when you could order these things through the mail, and it would be like a double album for $2. So you basically did it because you were getting all this music for so cheap, and no one had any money. But then you get it, and it's like, wow, that's weird. Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band, the things you'd hear that you had no idea of.
And then you'd be making a list of all the stuff that you had to go find.
Right, exactly.
And like we had we've got a great library system here and did back then. And so first thing I'd go to the library and I'd see if they had anything. And then you'd have to go to the weird record stores where like the front desk guy was not very nice, but they would probably have the stuff you're looking for. Yeah. And I'm careful not to say those times were better than they are now because I don't have any frame of reference. I can't understand how kids consume music now, and it's just different. But there was something really cool about there was about the hunt for stuff like that, or finding, going into record stores with your parents when you're on vacation, hoping they had some weird super chunk CD that you could not find anywhere and was out of print, but maybe they had a copy. And
when we were kids, you couldn't. It was a hell of a task because you had to either find the cutout bins or DJs, disc jockeys would offload the stuff that they didn't understand.
Right. Yeah. And as much as I love, personally, I love streaming now because I'm constantly listening to music, and I love the fact that I can go and listen to, I'll just wake up and be like, today is a Cars day, and I'll listen to every Cars record in a row. I think it's great. Yeah. But there was definitely, I think, one thing that doesn't happen for me anymore with the way music's consumed, and now we're completely off the original topic, but some of the records that I bought, you'd find a record, maybe they had one song on a sampler you liked, you'd go buy the CD and you'd be like, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
But then maybe a couple months later you throw it back in and you're like, oh, okay, I kind of like this. And then pretty soon it's like your new favorite thing.
Right.
And I feel like that's something I've lost with streaming, is that, if somebody sends me something, if I listen to it for 30 seconds or a minute and I'm not into it, I'm like, okay, I gave it a shot.
Right.
Stuff doesn't really grow on me at this point. It either grabs me instantly and I like it, or not. But some of my favorite records are ones that I bought based off of a tip, or based off a song somewhere, or based off I saw them live and they were great, and I bought their CD and got home and was like, this isn't what they sounded like live. But then, over time they become mainstays in my listening.
Right. Well, yeah, it's better and it's worse. We this is off discussed topic on our show. I find that, kind of what you were hinting at there is, if you buy an album, well, you've spent money on it. So now you actually have something of an investment.
That's true.
You may play it once and not have liked it that much. You're going to listen to it another couple times just to see, did I completely waste my money on this?
Yep. If I spent $15 on a CD at a show, I'm going to listen to the whole thing because I spent $15 on this record.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And I remember when we actually gave a crap about what a rock critic had to say about something. I couldn't wait to read the reviews on Sunday, by some of the albums.
Those days are over, I think. The days of critics having that kind of weight behind their opinions. People just don't care anymore.
I think it's good and bad. We can talk about that later.
So let's get to, well, first of all, this is From Akron and Beyond. I'm Bob Ethington with my co-host Nick Nicholas, and our guest is Dave Rich. And we've been talking about his background and first steps into music. And now I'd like to talk about the first band that I saw you with, which was Houseguest.
Oh, yeah.
Now, before I let you say anything about Houseguest, I'm going to say something about Houseguest, which is that the first time I saw you guys, I loved you. I thought you were terrific. I love the songs. I love the whole approach, the vocals, everything about it. And it seemed, I'm just going to be completely frank with you here. So it seems like then every time I saw you after that, you guys got progressively more drunk and louder.
Well, that's the way it's supposed to be.
And at one point, I was kind of like, I think they're kind of losing what I really liked about them. Now, I'm just giving you this as an unabashed fan of your records. So now you can comment and tell me if I'm full of
I disagree, Bob.
Okay.
I disagree. I love to say, Teddy Mallison, the vocalist, was a family friend, and I enjoyed seeing you guys from the early days to, the last time I saw you,
Well, I always enjoyed them. But
yeah,
but I thought you guys had tons of potential.
I don't remember the bad times. I don't remember the time you said you're doomed. I do remember the fall by the way.
They weren't like the Doors, it wasn't like Jim Morrison classic, falling down drunk on stage or anything.
I didn't compare them to the
No,
Doors.
okay.
Well, so
you have an organ for one thing.
I think when I look back on our time together,
I know I put you on the spot.
Yeah,
No,
you suck later on. What the-
No, we trust me as a band.
We're friends, I can say that.
We've relitigated our entire history multiple times through group texts and emails. So that was a really special band for me because we were all like best friends. Unlike a lot of other bands who, you start a band because you know a guy who plays drums and whatever, or you know maybe and you become friends after you play for a while, but it's
different.
And I've been in bands like that too, and they're great. But that was a really fun band because it was guys that I had known and went to high school with, and
Hung out with, huh?
Yeah, tons. I mean, Ted, the singer, I've known him since third grade, and the rest of the guys I met in high school, and two of the guys that started the band and put some songs out with them singing, and then just sort of evolved into this other thing. And I started playing drums in that band. I played drums for like the first year, and I had this really cheap. It was a brand called TKO drum set, and it literally just fell apart. Like we played for a year, and it was like one day we came home from the show, and I swear I just had pieces of my drum kit. I'm just like, I can't play drums anymore. I don't have any money, and I can't buy another drum kit. So I had to go get a drummer, and I switched to guitar only because I already had a guitar and an amp. I'm like, we gotta find a drummer. I don't have money to buy a drum kit. And so we were all best friends, and we were really good at egging each other on to do things. And also, I took a lot of bad lessons from all my favorite bands. And so all my favorite bands, even to this day, are, Guided by Voices and The Replacements and a lot of punk stuff, Tom Waits, people who, whether they intended to or not, glamorized the self-destruction of being in a band and showing people that you don't care. And by doing that, and also, if you're somebody who is incredibly socially anxious, like I was back then, I've gotten a lot better, but, pumping yourself up to make yourself feel like you deserve to be on the stage, booze is a really good comfort to make you feel pretty full of yourself for a while. And so, but unfortunately, we didn't really have the support system that like a Replacements had. So they could behave badly because they had people behind them going like, well, yeah, they're kind of jerks, but we're going to keep trotting them out there. We didn't really have that, but that's just how we thought bands were supposed to act. So. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about the band. I still love at least one of the records we put out. The other one I feel kind of wishy-washy on, but it was exciting. And obviously, with Pat Carney and the Black Keys going crazy, I think a side effect of that was I'll assume that most rock bands made up of friends don't have a friend close by who rockets to stardom, and so seeing Pat, and not to take away anything from how hard the Black Keys have worked, but it's like we saw them go from playing the Lime Spider to within a couple years they're on TV, they're on Conan O'Brien, all of a sudden they're touring, and it was well, they figured it out, anybody can do it,
right?
And Pat was very nice and started a local label that was distributed through their then label, which was Fat Possum, which is what their middle records came out on, Rubber Factory, and I think the one after that. And so it was well, Pat can open the doors. He understands all this stuff, and he did, and he knew a ton, but it kind of made me realize just how much luck and help you need from other people.
Sure.
And so even though Pat was kind of in the very early stages of becoming famous and known, does anybody really care that the drummer from a band has a label and has his friends on it? We thought this is it, or at least I thought this is it. And and also I don't really regret anything with that band. I know Pat he never really dinged us for it, but I think he expected us to once he recorded our first record in his basement, and I still think it turned out pretty good. We had distribution, which we're excited about. Of course, if nobody knows your album's out, are they going to go order it from somewhere? It was anybody in the world, anybody in the United States can go order our record. They just don't know that it exists or who we are. And this is before streaming, and this is before kind of the early days of social media like MySpace. We had a MySpace, you know, but you couldn't really share music through there, at least not till the very end. So it's still very analog feeling, and the only way to get your word out was to like go play shows.
Yeah.
And even towards the end of our 10 years of band, we had a booking agent who was putting us out there. But when I was like 22 or 23, came home from a bar one night from a show when I was living with my parents. And I came home and went to bed, and I woke up and my heart was like freaking out, like beating like this. And I've never done drugs that speed you up or anything like that. My heart was going crazy, and it was. I had my dad listen. I was like, "Hey, my heart feels really weird. Whenever I bend over to like pick something up, I feel like I'm going to pass out. Like I don't know what's going on." And I had to go to work that night. I worked at a movie theater back then, and I was like, "Well, I got to go to work at 6 till I got to do the 6 to 2 a.m. shift." And my dad was like, "You need to go to the emergency room." And I was like, "No." And he convinced me. So I remember calling my boss, and I'm like, "My dad's making me go to the hospital. I'm sure I'm fine. I'll be there as soon as I can." I ended up being in the hospital for like 4 days.
Oh, wow.
And it turns out I didn't know, but I have like an irregular heartbeat, and I don't know, all the things that are bad for your irregular heartbeat are smoking cigs, which I loved doing back then, drinking, eating tons of cheeseburgers, like staying out late and not sleeping.
Yeah, right,
like this, all the stuff that I was doing. So, I got out of the hospital, and it took me like 2 weeks to get back to normal, because when you have heart stuff, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
But the thing that really freaked me out is my parents got the bill for this hospital stay, and it was, 3.5 days for like $38,000 in $2,004 or whatever it was. Yeah. And healthcare is a calamity now. Yeah. It was even more so back then. Yeah. And the fact that I was in the hospital at the age of 22 or 23, like that was a pre-existing condition. So nobody was going to cover me. Right. You couldn't even if you were going to get Cobra health insurance back then with my pre-existing heart issue, that had been like $850 a month or something like that. And I was working a minimum wage job so that I could go on tour with my band, and we saved up enough money. And so I know, Pat, there was nothing I wanted to do more than like jump in the van and get out, and all I want to do is play shows and sleep on floors, like all the misery that entails. I was all about. Right. But I had this terror that we'd be out somewhere and my heart would freak out, and I'd end up in a hospital on the other end of the country, and not only have nobody there to like help me, but also be racking up however much debt. Right. It was really frightening. And I've been in the hospital a few times since then with the same issue, and now I've turned it around with like trying to live healthier, and started running. And now, like when the doctor listens, he's like, "Oh, you sound great," but like it wasn't like that for my 20s. And so that, I'm not saying anything would have been different. Lots of bands go out and tour for years and years and have the same outcome. But I definitely I always felt like I had to have a job, because back then you could work a part-time job and they'd give you health insurance, something that most companies don't do anymore. Right. But at the time, I could work a minimum wage job, save up enough money to go on a 2-week tour with the band, come home, keep working, do it again. But I always felt just terrified of, I had this ticking time bomb in my chest, and I was really afraid of like going out without a safety net, which, maybe it would have worked out. But it was definitely something that made me make choices about how to play music that I felt like I didn't have control over. Right.
Well, I think it's safe to say, made the right choice.
Probably. It was not. I don't know. It's not really regret, because I can't really change how my heart beats, but it was definitely the thing where like all I wanted to do was go out and play, and we did to a certain extent, but it was always like, we'll work and then we'll do this and then we'll play and then repeat that cycle over and over again. And
how long was that band together?
Maybe like 9 years or 10,
Wow.
9 or 10 years, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I still friends with all those guys. One of them, Steve, the drummer, we have kids the exact same age. We see each other constantly, like just constant play dates and hangouts. And, right. I still see all those guys. Ted lives in Washington, D.C. or nearby. So I really wanted to, I would have kept going. And, we kind of made the decision like, all right, you know what? There was a whole blow up with our last tour, which was not our fault. I can go into that if you want. It's kind of funny. But,
sure.
So
why not?
We finally had this booking agent. To me, like, I didn't really care so much about like being on a label or whatever. All I cared about was a booking agent, because to me, I thought if we have a guy or girl, if we have somebody who could book you tours and like try to get you to earn some money, at least maybe then, like if I had a heart freak out or something, it wouldn't be so dire because I could just have him put us back on the road. Like it was almost like having a job, right?
Right.
And so he booked us a few tours and it was okay. And then we had our second record come out from Pat, and Pat had paid the money to like actually put us in a studio and make the record, and he hired us a publicist who was supposed to get us reviews. We were trying to line everything up. I think it came out in like September or October of like, I'm looking at the back of the CD. When did this come out? It was like 2008 maybe or something like that. And so this booking agent was like, hey, I'm handing you off to this guy. I forget his name. I think maybe it was Jesse or something. And Ted was the guy communicating with him. And so we were all ready. We were working, saving up our money. We were going to leave our jobs. Steve, the drummer, was getting ready to quit his job. He was like, this is it, man. This is the final push. And I was like, screw it. I'm going to take a month off work. If they fire me, that's it. I'm going to put it on the line.
Right.
I'd squared away a month off from work, which was a debacle. And the idea was like, we're going to do this for the month. And if things are feeling okay, doesn't mean that we're making a lot of money, but like if we can keep ourselves on the road, we get opportunities to open for people, like who knows?
Right.
And so it's getting closer to the release date. And every time at practice, we're bugging Ted. We're like, what are the dates? Like, when do we leave? When do we come back? And he's like, don't worry about it. I talk to this guy every week through email. I've talked to him on the phone. Like, he's working on it. And getting closer. And it's like, hey, man, when are we supposed to leave? Like, what's the day we are in the van leaving Akron? And he'd be like, he tells me he's putting it together. And I even saw the email from one of them. He's like, hey, you guys are an unknown band. A lot of these are going to fall into place at the last minute. Don't worry. I'm working on it. And finally, like, I mean, maybe a week before we're supposed to leave, record is about to drop. The guy sends us our tour. And I'm not kidding. It's like a show in Columbus, a show in Oklahoma, and a show in like Texas.
No.
And we were like, what is this? I could have booked us a tour in the time that this took.
3 shows.
Yeah. And apparently what had happened, because of course we called the guy that owned the booking company and we were like, what on earth? And the guy was very apologetic and said, I hired this kid. He was a hard worker. Apparently what he was doing was using his time being paid by this guy to book his own band on gigs. He had his own rock band. So he was getting paid to book his own tours and didn't really spend any time on us. And so the guy got fired.
Yeah.
And the guy who owned the booking company was like, I'm so sorry. I will book you a tour, at least one for free. Like, I won't take a cut. Let me know. But at that point, like, he was like, look, if you want a month-long tour, I can't do anything till probably January. And it's like September. And we're like, you know, Pat was getting ready to leave with the Black Keys.
Yeah.
Like, are we gonna re-release the album and pay another publicist? Like, that was kind of the moment where we were all like, you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe we just play around here.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And we get on with our lives.
It's like fate had stepped in.
Yeah. So there was even like a Beacon Journal article about the record. It's like, they're about to head out on their biggest tour ever. And it's like, I remember seeing people around town and they're like, aren't you on tour? And be like, no.
In between gigs.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the medieval fair, flowers sprayed in your hair for too long.
Well, there's the music business for you folks.
Oh, man.
Nutshell right there.
For sure.
Okay, so let's speed forward here a little bit. I know you were in the band May Company with that was what, Dave Giffords? Who else was in that?
Dave and a guy named Friday Mike.
Oh, yes, okay.
I refuse to use his last name. He is Friday Mike
Yes.
for always. My phone keeps wanting me to change his name. It's like, there's new information for this guy. And I'm like, no. He's listed as Friday Mike in my phone. It's how he's going to stay. And a guy named Pat on drums. And I don't even remember how it came together. I mean, I've known Dave for years and years.
Yeah.
And so when I was in, like, when Houseguest was done, I was kind of looking for something to do. And we get together and he was writing songs. It was really cool. It was one of the funnest bands I've ever been in because everybody would write, you know, we put out like 2 EPs and we each would put on 2 songs and they were just hangout sessions at practice and, you know, played a bunch of shows and it was fun. There was no no ambition whatsoever other than let's write some songs. And, that was a fun band too. And that's now Dave and Mike play with me in my current band, and it was really just because I knew how good they were.
Right. Now, before we get to the current band, you had a band that blew a lot of people's minds, the Beyonderers.
Yeah.
Which, is that still a going thing, or is it kind of on pause?
It's on pause.
Yeah.
We were together also for I think maybe that band was around longer than Houseguest was. It would be 10 years this.
Wow.
Maybe 10 years it was this winter. Maybe now is the 10
kind
year.
Of mortifying to me how long you've been in these bands. I mean, it's like time is passing. I never would have guessed it was that long.
Well,
I know.
We're playing at, porches next to each other. One of the porch riders at Bizarro's on one porch, you're the other.
Yeah, I remember that.
I enjoyed seeing you guys.
And that I love when I buy vinyl, which I buy a lot of. Well, not as much as I'd like, but I love those. I love guitar music. I just love it. Going back to the guitar, I like jazz. I love the weird guitar albums from the 50s and 60s where it's like some guy you've never heard of playing a bunch of hits of the day, but they're instrumental versions. I love that stuff. I love the Ventures and the Shadows and surf music. I just, I get all the jokes about how it all sounds the same. It does, but I love it. Surf music's like a banana. If you have a banana and it's really good, God, that's a great banana. I'm gonna start eating bananas every day. But then you eat some crappy bananas. It's like I don't know why I got into bananas so much. And there's a lot of surf music out there, but when you get the good one, it's like, oh, I love this. This is so great. And then you load up on it, and it's like, okay, this is too much. But I love surf music, and I did, at the time, after playing with the May Company, I don't know, I was about to have a kid. And my first kid, and I had this thing in my head where I was like, I don't have anything worth singing about. I just convinced myself of that. I was like, I think when Beyonderers started, I was like 33 or 34. And this is 33-year-old white guy. I've now officially entered a career in a workforce, and I work 9 to 5, and I sometimes have to wear a tie to work. Why would I be singing? I felt kind of fraudulent on stage singing, which is so stupid, but at the time that's how I felt. And my way around that was I'll play instrumental music, and that way it's just about guitar and performance and the songs, the arrangement. And I'll tell you, man, playing in an instrumental band is so fun because it doesn't matter where you play. You don't need a PA system. You don't have to worry about hearing yourself. You don't have to worry about anything. You show up, you plug into your amp, and you let it rip. And it was such a low maintenance band. We played a lot of I opened for lots of people that I really respect. I got to open for Dick Dale once. Wow. Got to play with Los Straight Jackets. And it really only kind of stopped. My brother was the bass player. My brother Andrew's a great bass player. And he had a baby, and he wanted to take some time off. He was going back to graduate school. And then my fault is that I got us on an opening gig with a band called the Suffragettes. Who are a very well-known surf band, all ladies. And we played with them at the Beachland Tavern, and it was a great show. And then within 2 weeks, my drummer, Ann, and she was my drummer first, she's like, hey, the Suffragettes reached out through Instagram to make connection. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And of course, they asked her to play, and they asked her to cover a tour. And then they played a Beach Boys cruise where they were playing with the OJs or something, and the Beach Boys themselves, and she met John Stamos, who was playing guitar for the Beach Boys. So now she's off in Suffragettes land. She's on tour now. It's a 2-month tour, so I'm so happy for her. But she texts me once in a while, and she's like, we got to do a reunion show, and I want to, but also she's out there doing it, so I don't want to put any pressure on her. Hey, when you're done with your real band, can you relearn all these really difficult songs so we can do one show? But I still love that. I still listen to a lot of that stuff.
Well, the Beyonderers is where Dave really got the shred and shine.
It's all my favorite. I mean, it was just about guitar and just playing guitar without any pretense. And there's, when you're playing instrumental music, there's no real point of view other than here's riffs. Here's a riff. Here's another riff. Here's a quiet part. Now we're going to get loud again. It's all the most basic parts of rock and roll that I love. And I could have kept it going, but I don't know. Beyonderers, we subbed in a few different bass players towards the end, and each one of them was really fun and great to play with. But I don't know, like to play without Ann, I feel like she was such a, she really kept me in check with like, she's such a great drummer, and I don't know if I did another instrumental thing, I just think I'd start something different, even if it sounded exactly the same. I don't know. She is such like a part of Beyonderers. I can't see using that name without her back on drums.
Right. Yeah, she is a terrific drummer and just cool looking too, right? I mean, it kind of gives it was a cool thing about the whole band, just the way you guys.
If anything,
across.
I don't really believe in fate or things happening for a reason, but like I do think maybe that band only existed to get her into the Suffragettes, because if you look at pictures of them, she looks like she was born to be in that band.
Right,
so like it just she's it's really great.
Ever since man has looked up into the stars, he has seen strange objects in the skies. But the search for proof of extraterrestrial intelligence has produced disappointing results. The best so-called evidence has only been a few photographs and film clips. But now, all that's about to change.
You're listening to From Akron and Beyond with Bob Ethington and Nick Nicholas on the Summit FM. 91.3 WAPS Akron Canton, WAPS HD1 Akron, and 90.7 FM WKTL Struthers Youngstown. Also heard in Athens, Ohio on 90.1 FM W211BT Athens. You're listening to From Akron and Beyond.
So this is From Akron and Beyond. I'm Bob Ethington with my co-host Nick Nicholas. We are talking with Dave Rich, and we are now to the main subject of our program, which is Dave's current project, which is his band, Dave Rich and the Enablers. But this is really a project of love for you, Dave, and incredibly ambitious. And why don't you describe it to our listeners?
Sure. I don't know. It doesn't feel that ambitious to me, just because I don't know that I really have any goals.
So you're writing 100 songs. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Well, explain that.
Well, I brought my notebooks because I feel like people have really questioned whether or not I did that. So I brought my. You can check my binders on the way out. Beyonderers decided to go on hiatus because Ann was taken off for tour, and I didn't want to put any pressure on her or anything like that. And so during COVID, when the pandemic came to town and everything stopped, like I'd been very reluctant my whole life to do home recording. So I tried it in my late teens when I discovered lo-fi music.
I was going to say that's interesting because you're kind of going back full circle to the Tobin Sprout stuff and the lo-fi stuff. Yeah.
Well, and when I became obsessed with that stuff early on, I tried it, and I saved up, and I got an 8-track Tascam 8-track, and I had my mixing board, and I had a couple microphones. And like I would make stuff, but I was never out. I was not ready to be doing that stuff because even though I loved lo-fi music and I loved hearing people's mistakes, I was also like kind of a perfectionist at the time.
Sure. And
also, even though it was lo-fi, it still never sounded good to me when I would do it myself. I didn't understand reverb or like how to get good sounds even with like cheap equipment.
Right.
I didn't know how to. One of my favorite things about lo-fi music, and especially like Guided by Voices, is that they kind of learned to. I don't know if they ever really did this, but to me it sounds like they started writing to the limitations of the recordings. And I didn't understand how to do that. I would just write my songs and then I'd be pissed because it didn't sound like I wanted it to in my head.
Right.
Instead of like writing a song and then letting it take shape with the equipment that you have access to, which is probably how you should, approach record, at least how I should have. And so I kind of gave up on it. plus I was using tapes. I'd overdub things a million times. The tape would snap. I just had all of the nightmares that somebody with like analog equipment would have. And I have a very low tolerance for frustration. And so I just sort of was like, screw this. I made a couple little tapes that I gave out to friends, stuff like that. But I would rather just be in a band and we, save up money from gigs. And like Beyonderers would play for a year, save up all our gig money, go into a studio, and then that's how we did our records.
Right.
Still do them on the cheap. We usually do our records in 2 days, but we just have to save up $1,000 for that. So when the pandemic finally came, I almost said that.
We've been waiting for it for so long.
I've been waiting for years for a pandemic. But when it showed up and all the venues closed and bands weren't practicing and I didn't even know if it would ever happen again.
Yeah.
I thought, well, maybe now is time to, it's not like I'm doing anything else. Maybe I take the one night a week that I would normally be at band practice and I figure out how to do something.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I guess technology has finally gotten to a point where even I'm so bad with computers and technology in general. I don't understand how a computer works. I don't understand how to make it do anything. But I've managed to get some help from friends. I have a pretty primitive workflow that allows me to get what I want out of it. And so once I did that, I made an instrumental album in 2021, a true pandemic album. There was a bunch of things that I made for Beyonderers that we never used. And so I just kind of did that as an experiment to figure out how to make all the equipment work. And then once I did that, I don't know, when Beyonderers officially went on hiatus, when the pandemic started to ease up, we played some more shows and, but once that petered out, myself and our then bass player, Miles, who's a good friend of mine, we were like, well, all right, let's pause Beyonderers. And while Anne's doing her thing, hey, why don't we each start a band? I think this is December of 2022. We're like, let's each start a band and we'll each make a record and we'll do a CD release show in 6 months. In July, let's book a show. So we have to have a record done by July. And so I started writing tunes and I was like, well, I haven't sung in a while. I don't know. Let's give it a shot. And I'm a big fan of New Year's resolutions. I make them every year and I try to stick with them and I monitor whether or not I've done it. Usually it has to do with drinking more water, which I always fail at, exercising better, eating better, the typical stuff. But for 2023, I wrote down a list of New Year's resolutions having to do with making stuff. And I was like, I'm going to try to correct all my bad habits, which was I've always been prolific, I guess, but I would write songs and not like them, I'd throw them away, or I'd record them, or I'd put them in my phone, or put them on a tape and then put them in a drawer and lose them. And, they didn't fit with the band I was in. So I just write them as an exercise. And I was like, I'm going to finish every part that I write on a guitar, whether it stinks or not, I'm going to make it into a song. I'm also not going to go to bed every day until I've made something that didn't exist prior. Okay. So that could be a drum beat, it could be a chord progression, it could be a whole song, it could be one sentence of lyrics in my phone that I'm going to use later. So I have to make something. Maybe it's a big thing, maybe it's a tiny thing. And then my other one was any song I finish, I'm going to record it, even if I feel this doesn't represent what I think I want to do, or this isn't the kind of band I want to. If I write a metal song, I'm gonna record it. If I write a whatever, and I just kind of trained my brain pretty quick to finish songs, and I was worried that I wouldn't have enough songs in that 6 months, but I wrote 10 that I was happy with, and then I kept going. And then it became all right, I'm just going to write as many songs in 1 year as I can. And I ended 2023 with 108 or something, of all kinds of different things. Yeah. And I'm going a little slower this year. I'm at I just finished one this morning. I think I'm at 120 something for the since last year. So I just record them and I put them out. And I know Chris Butler, who's my drummer, is just an amazing guy, and I've had him on this show, and he's great. I think early on he was kind of you should really space this stuff out. You're putting, putting a lot of music out and it's hard for people to keep up with.
Mm-hmm.
But and it's valid advice, but also I don't know what else to do with it, because I'm acutely aware now of how, I don't want to sound too hoity-toity, but like I do think music is art and craft. And then everything else besides the making and recording of it, I think is the business of music.
Mm-hmm.
It's capitalism, right?
Yeah.
And so I love playing shows, but, I've never been somebody, a lot of people are very, their performance is art. Like Peter Gabriel would probably say that his performance is art. People like that.
Right.
I've never really felt like that or really been interested in, like, I'm not very theatrical on stage. I'm not going to find a cape or whatever. It's just not, I wish I had it in me, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
And so I love playing the shows, but that's not really like, that's the business side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I don't have any control over whether people like it or whether they want to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer that if you make stuff, if you make songs and you put them out, I think they'll find people that need them. Yeah. Whether you have 2 Spotify listeners or 2 million or whatever, if you make a song and somebody listens to it and it alters their brain in some imperceptible way, I mean, I think that's as much as you should or could want out of making something. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, I don't have the patience for anything that would be advice these days. Like I know like people put out singles these days and they really hype up their singles and like, oh, we've got a single coming out in 2 months, it's going to drop. And that's awesome. Like there's no competition. Some people write 2 songs a year or 10 songs a year.
Right.
I'm not a better musician for writing a lot of songs at all. I just, I kind of now understand how Pollard from Guided by Voices does it. He's legendary for writing all these songs. And I a little bit understand, like, you wake up every day and you do the thing. Mm-hmm. It's a part of what you do. Doesn't mean you have to put it all out.
Right.
But like I do, because I think it's just the process. You write it, you write it down, you record it, and you package it into something that represents that group of songs, and you put it out there.
Right.
And I don't know, I can't imagine getting less of a response than when I did it the other way, which is like work really hard on this thing and write these songs and spend a bunch of money recording it. And you put out 1 record every 3 years and you have 1 CD release show and maybe people show up and that's great. But then it's like, what a momentum killer for bands. I've seen we've all probably seen bands do this thing where they start up and there's some excitement around them and they write the tunes and they play them 1,000,000 times in front of the same people.
Sure,
and they finally put out a record that has those songs on it. And then it's like, well, okay, I guess we were to write more songs.
Right.
There's like no momentum.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd rather put out a ton of music and maybe pick 1 or 2 songs off each record and put them in live than anything else.
So I have to, it's interesting because Dave and I are both huge fans of the aforementioned Guided by Voices and Dayton's own Robert Pollard, who is, of course, as you mentioned, he's infamous for his
output.
How
crazy.
Prolific he is, and it's just nuts. And, so I know there had to be some sort of slight inspirational thing there. Or at least if not inspiration,
motivation.
At least, or just an example, that it's doable. But what I'm interested in hearing you talk about this, which I never really quite thought about until you described it, your actual approach to this, is that it's really what you're doing is just making creativity. If this sounds wrong, tell me. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to conceptualize it myself. It seems like it's really making the creative act part of just everyday life and making it that you had to sort of make a rule that you were going to try to complete something by the end of each day. You probably aren't even thinking about it that way now, right? Like,
yeah,
because in a way you're just doing it.
Well, and I've always written, whether it was Beyonderers or as May Company or even Houseguest, like I've always written a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. But there's only, when you're in a very democratic band, there's only so much stuff that you're going to get into the mix.
Right.
If everybody, like Houseguest is very frustratingly sometimes like democratic, where everybody had to sign off on every part, and that's why it took us so long to write songs sometimes.
Yeah.
and or like May Company, we each would put 2 songs on the EPs, and so I'd have like 20 songs that I had laying around. I'd be like, okay, these 2 are the ones I'm gonna
Right.
and so I don't have anybody. You know, my band now, they're so great and they're wonderful, and I keep asking them if they want to record together. I've got lots of songs that I haven't done anything with yet. They don't seem super interested. Like they say yes, but then at the end of the day, they kind of just say like, well, just send us more songs that you just finished.
Yeah.
And those are, you know, I think they like the idea of there's no arguing.
Right.
You send us the tune. I don't tell them what to play. I write out the chords for them. But like with Mike on guitar, I don't tell him like, here's the lead part that I played. Like he can copy him or he can do his own thing. I don't care.
Okay.
Like the performance is I don't care what Dave plays on bass. You know, I wrote the bass parts and played them on the records. He can follow them or not.
Right.
I would prefer that he played the right chords somewhere, but like whatever, maybe not. I don't know. And Chris has changed some of the songs on drums where they sound way better live than they did the way I recorded them. Yeah. So that's the downside is like it's hard to bottle the energy you get playing off people when you're doing it all by yourself. I'm getting better at being open to making mistakes and then being like, I'm going to leave that in because it's more interesting if there are mistakes than if I just redo it and make it better. But I'm getting better at that. And I think, I don't know, at this point in my life, it's just it's like I have a good workflow. I've always written a lot of songs. I work fast. But now I have a base level of like technical knowledge where I can do it, but I still don't understand reverb. I don't understand compressors. I don't understand. I have one microphone to do everything with. Like I don't know it, and I don't really care to learn it. I'd rather spend that time playing guitar or like writing stuff. And I think it is like, so, you know, some people get into woodworking and they do that all the time, and they make chairs or they make stuff and they give it away. And you know, I'll say this with Beyonderers, the cool thing, there are a lot of surf freaks that will just buy CDs because like collecting, it's kind of like buying comics or like, you know, surf music is such a niche thing. Right. That like, you know, 9 out of 10 shows we'd play, they'd be like typical rock shows. And then every once in a while you'd get on an official surf show and those dudes will buy stuff. Like we would sell CDs hand over fist to guys who were like, oh yeah, this is great. Nobody wants my current CDs. It's just like, just not, no one cares. I still make them because I feel like if I'm going to take the time to make a record, just making a thumbnail of art and putting it on streaming services bums me out. Like I have to have a CD just to be like, I made this. And if somebody wants it, I can give it to them.
Right. Yeah. The physical thing.
Yeah. I still love, and I like designing. I like doing the art. I like doing the insides, and maybe no one ever sees them, but I like to put them together. It's an object. Right. But yeah, it's really just like, I sit down and play stuff into my phone, and then I think how I'm going to turn this into a song. And like I used to think I had nothing to say. I don't know that I have any specific things to say at this point with lyrics, but I just kind of have a constant stream of lyrics in my phone, and it's just making a thing and putting those pieces together and making it a song and then putting it out into the world. And yeah, it probably is too much. I mean, I know my own friends haven't listened to all my stuff. My wife hasn't listened to probably more than like the first album. I put out 4 albums last year. She probably listened to the first one. But that's okay. I mean, I don't know, like I'm really happy with the one that's about to come out. It's the first one of this year.
This will be the 5th one then?
Yeah. In about 5th one in 8 months. And they each have 10 songs on them. That's kind of just like I stop it at 10. I feel like 10 is a good, like I change my setup and I'll think to myself like, okay, like the one I just finished that's coming out soon, I really wanted it to sound as slick as I could. So like I picked 10 songs where I'm like, these are big rock songs. I'm really going to like make this sound good. And then the one after that I'm working on now, like I pick songs that I think like first takes as much as possible. It sounds pretty crappy. Like it's going a lot faster. So I try to like with 10 songs, I like the idea of like, I'm going to give these 10 a different, I'll start with acoustics as the bass track, or I'm going to start playing bass first on these songs and then I'll build from there. Yeah. So it's kind of like a nice experiment to try to, okay, how do I make these next 10 songs sound different than the previous 10 songs I did?
Right. So the listeners understand the albums that you're making, you play all the instruments on. Yeah. And then when people come out to see Dave Rich and the Enablers, they're seeing you with Friday Mike, Chris Butler, and Dave Giffels backing you and then playing these same songs.
So the band, your live band doesn't have any part of the recording of the CDs you're releasing?
Not yet. And like I mentioned, I would like them to, because Chris is such a great drummer, and Friday Mike is a phenomenal guitar player and singer in his own right. He writes great songs too, but he's like, as a backup, singing backup vocals is hard live. Like I've done it before in other bands, and it's tough when you're sweaty and hot and the sound system stinks and like hitting some high note that, it's hard, and he's great at it.
He is really good at
and
that.
Dave is just a solid bass player, and it's, I really want to get them on a recording, but they also, Friday Mike's about to have a baby, his first one.
Right.
And so it's like, I don't want to put
Everything
too much
changes.
pressure. Be like, Mike, you got to come in and do your guitar parts, man.
Yeah.
Stop changing diapers. You got to,
Right.
So we'll see if it happens. I'm trying to keep my ambitions sort of low. If I have any ambitions, I just want people to hear them. I've never been more inspired to make stuff now. I can kind of write on, I'm not bragging, I can kind of write on command at this point, and I love it. And I've never been more baffled at like how to get anybody to care.
Right.
But also, I don't know that really should be like, I also don't care. Yeah. I'm not going to, there's a lot of people, I'm friends with some younger musicians from around here who are really tuned in to like making content, right? Making videos and talking into Instagram and telling people what's up and showing them the creative process. And it's not that I don't want to do that stuff. It doesn't even occur to me.
Right.
And I do it a little bit, like when there's a show coming up, I'll try to post it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope people find it, and I hope people like the tunes, and but yeah, I don't really have any feelings about how I want it to do or not do.
Yeah.
You're just setting yourself up, like, Spotify tells you, well, you've only got 30 listeners this month, and like it's really easy to get down on yourself compared to other people who have 1,000 or whatever. But it's just that's capitalism trying to tell you how your music is supposed to be, oh, if you don't have this many listeners, then you're not legit, or if you're not out there killing yourself on tour.
Right.
I think there's a lot of stigma, or at least I feel it, with the idea of like a local band. And it's so weird because we're in an age now where like, if you know of a really cool hot sauce that somebody makes in their basement down the street from you, you want to tell everybody about that. Like, oh, I got this hot sauce. This weird guy down the street makes his own hot sauce, and I get it, or whatever. Like we're into that. Or oh, I found this, table and chair set at an Amish country, and it was handmade. Yet for music, we don't consider music real or whatever unless it's on, some blog, or the band is out there killing themselves on tour.
Right.
And nothing against bands that are making money or want to make money or make a career in music, like go for it. Yeah. But I also I would put my songs up against anybody's who makes a living off of it. And it's not a competition. It's just that like either you put your time in to learn the craft or you don't. I don't know that putting the craft in means that you were entitled to making money off of it.
Right.
I don't think I'm entitled to, just because I spent 3 million hours learning how to shred on the guitar. Like, I don't know that means I deserve a monthly income from playing guitar, but,
That's what my wife always says. And she always says to me, well, of course, I'm long over any such grandiose dreams of wealth and fame. But, I mean, she will always say, people shouldn't expect to just become rich and famous for doing something they really love to do. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you make sense, But I have to say, Dave, your approach, hearing you really talk about it in depth for the first time on our show, I find it very refreshing and very healthy. I think it just sounds,
very healthy.
Yeah, like a really cool way of looking at it, because you're doing it for the most important reason. You enjoy it.
Yeah. and I don't know what else to do with myself.
Right,
I do think to myself that at some point I'm going to make bird feeders. I'm really into the idea of making bird feeders. I bought a book about how to, what kind of birds need which kind of birdhouse and bird feeder. I have this idea that at some point I will get enough tools where I can make handcrafted bird feeders, and then I'll just sell them at arts fairs.
Yeah.
Because I think it'd be really cool to make a thing that looks nice, but also is like a little house for a creature.
I think there's a market for him, actually.
And I want to do that, but like, we'll see. I don't have any time right now,
Right.
but because what little free time I have, I'm down in the basement yelling into a microphone.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just I have friends now who typically younger music people who feel the pressure to like do to like perform at a certain level or whatever, and I don't know. We were talking before the mics came on. Like, it's a little different, if you play a gig and you've agreed to get paid a certain amount and you get stiffed, like, that's different. I'll get bent out of shape about that. Or, if you play a show and you feel like you should make a certain amount and, it's a little different. But again, that's removed from the art part of making it.
Right.
And yeah, like, I probably could make records a bigger deal if I put out one record a year and really, really hyped it up and really spent a lot of time. This next one I'm putting out that comes out in a week as we're talking about this, it's called Heedless by Any Measure. I think it's my best one, and I'm really excited about it. And it turned out exactly how I heard it in my head, which has never happened with any music.
Yeah.
Cool. And chances are it's going to come out and it'll get some streams for a couple weeks, and then it's going to completely drop off the radar. But I don't know. So what?
Yeah.
Like, one of my, the alternative would be to build it up for a year and play a big, probably fairly well attended show if I really hype it up. But then then I got to do another one a year from then. I'd rather put out 5 records and then pick some songs and play some shows and have fun and drink some beers and, well, I'm allergic to beer, but, have some seltzers and
Hey, Dave, where could people physically purchase your CDs here?
Pretty much just at Square Records. Okay. I have them all, like, there's that Bandcamp website that seems to still be going strong, even though the ownership has changed hands recently. So, like, I have everything up on Bandcamp, and you can stream it for free there. It's on all the streaming services.
But physically
Square. At Square Records. It was funny because for a long time, Beyonderers CDs were found at 2 places: Square Records and some CD place in Italy. Because, like, again, man, the surf people will find you. And I remember somebody sent me an email that had been clearly, like, sent through Google Translate, and it was like, "Hi, we've heard your music. We would love your CDs." And it was like in Italy, and I was like, "Sure." I sent some over. So for a while, when we had like a Beyonderers website, it was like, "Find our CDs at Square Records in Akron and Surfer Joe's in Italy," or something like that, whatever it was. But yeah, it's Square Records. And honestly, though, people don't really. I've sold a few through Square Records, but people are going to stream it. It doesn't have the kind of like collectability that surf music did. But maybe 2 decades from now, when I'm gone or whatever, and my son sells one of my songs to a Volvo commercial or something, I can be like Nick Drake, where suddenly people want my stuff again. That'd be great. That's what I'm banking on.
Right.
I'm going for the day when, like, I'm long gone and, like, there's some article in, like, a digital, I don't know what newspapers will look like by then, or magazines, like, this guy put out 100 records and no one knew who he was. And
lost genius.
Now his song's in a gun commercial or whatever is popular, and then.
Well, Dave, it's been great having you on.
Thanks for having me. I love the show. To even think that I'm worthy of being talked to in the same way that, like, Chris Butler and Giffels and you had Flacco on too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that guy,
he's amazing too.
That guy's a hard worker. I play with them sometimes too, and that's a blast. That's just a whole other feeling.
Oh yeah, I know. I've seen you with him, and it is fun. Yeah. Well, I was happy to have an opportunity to do, like, a deep dive into Dave's
absolutely.
career and his approach to music.
I didn't even get to mention that the only other time I ever performed with another band was a band that we put together for a special Andy Warhol. What was it? Andy Warhol. what do you call those?
Exhibit?
Yeah, at the
Canton
Massillon Museum, but it was a Polaroid exhibit.
Yeah, and
we put
did,
together a band. We put Pale Blue Eyes. We did like an hour of Velvet Underground.
Right. Yeah, and I know Harvey's going to listen to this probably, and I was being a real SOB because I know Harvey wanted me to keep those songs simple, and I would just keep throwing in these like little like country licks, and he would look over at me and he'd be so mad, and I thought it was so funny.
My drummer Martin and I still talk about when Harvey would yell at us because we were doing something right.
Yeah.
He yelled at you. He yelled. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Beings from other galaxies visited Earth in ancient times. All over the Earth, the evidence is there.
Again, our guest has been Dave Rich. Thanks, Dave, for being on. And this has been From Akron and Beyond with Bob Ethington and Nick Nicholas. And we will see you next time.
See you later.